Hey, David here, and welcome. I've been thinking a lot about local radio, and I'll tell you why I think it's important. And I recently read a Wall Street Journal article on the wiser and more mature of us, and I found it very upsetting, and I'll tell you why. And yes, I have a pornography story. And maybe if we get to it, I'll talk about how we may be reaching the end of our to-do list. So that's what we'll yak about today. What's up, everybody? David Yakir here for Yak About Today, hoping you are better, healthier, and more informed than any generation that came before. So if the years 46 to 64 mean something to you, then this is the place you want to be. Now put your headphones on, go for a run, and listen to what we yak about today. Okay, thanks for listening. It's David here. Anyway, as I said, I want to talk a little about local radio, and probably I'm always interested in it, obviously, because I'm on the radio, and I do local radio in a particular market in Indian River County in Vero Beach, which is where I record. And for you podcasting fans out there, bear with me, because I want to talk a little about how we have to appreciate local radio. So, I always read the NAB reports and see what's happening in radio. And many of you know that, especially the wiser and more mature of you, that in the olden golden days, each market had its own radio station, and they'd play their top 10 lists, or they'd have talk radio conversations. And then as radio matured, what happened is the big companies started buying out the local radio stations, and it became sort of the de facto way to run a radio station, to sort of run the same playlists or conversations right across all the stations that they owned. And between the two, maybe three of the big ones, you could be living in New York, or you could be living in Florida or California, and you'd all be listening to either, music, the top 10 lists, or whatever the format is, or talk radio, like, some of the conservative radio show hosts like Rush Limbaugh, who in this market precedes me on this station. And, that's the way radio happened. Well, with the advent of the internet and podcasting and satellite radio in the cars, the format that they were using started to die off little by little, and it's continuing to do so. So what's happening is the bigger radio owners are leasing back the stations to local communities. So why am I saying this? So for the last couple of weeks, I've set a certain amount of time to work on a project, and I sort of put my work time. I started working the thing that pays me, the marketing company, earlier, and arranging all my meetings either earlier or later. And between the hours of about 3 and 6 in the afternoon, I'm working on my project. And what the project is, I'm working on a new musical adaptation of Dorian Gray, which currently is called Dorian. And, I've dedicated myself, these are the hours I'm going to spend writing this. And sometimes I can go 3 to 6 o'clock in the evening and, write 10 words. And sometimes I get a couple of pages out, and that's all good. But the reason I'm telling you the story is because I had, for the last couple of weeks, our local radio station on, and the one that I'm on. And between the hours of 3 and 6 every day, I would listen, and I realized I hadn't listened to the station continuously. I don't think ever. You get in the car and you tune in because some of your friends are on hosting their show, and you'll tune in, drive to your destination, get out. And this is the first time I spent a couple of weeks listening. And I'm really proud to say that it is extraordinary what's happening. I don't know if it's happening that well in other local radio markets, but certainly here. This station, which is Waxy 107.9, and on the AM station, it's 1370, has local radio hosts that all concentrate on different aspects of life. And as I was listening, I realized that some of our hosts, and I don't want to start naming them because I'll leave somebody out, and I don't want to do that. Somebody hosts a program that really saves our beaches and concentrates on our environment. Other hosts concentrate on our local vets and veterinarian. The local vets, and some of our hosts introduce, the best students in the community who are going on, and some of our hosts concentrate on entertainment in our community. And it really got me thinking that I don't really do that kind of format show where I interview people as I used to, and maybe in the future I will. I sort of just chit-chat and yak, as the show tells you I do. But I was really proud of this station, and it's all produced by Sally, Wayne, and Donna, and I think they're putting out extraordinary local content in this community. And it got me thinking how extraordinary the Vero Beach area is in Indian River County, because very few communities this size not only have this kind of local content, but several newspapers, right, and a major theater, a couple of major theaters. We have an opera, we have a ballet. And for a small community to be putting out this kind of rich content is really something. And I just wanted to do a shout out to the local radio stars here. And I would go through all your names, but I'll probably leave somebody out. And to Vero Beach and Indian River County in general, for really being such a rich society. And what I left out, by the way, is a lot of radio hosts do concentrate on the charities. That's a big one in the area. So, hurrah to our local radio station. And you guys who are listening to this on the podcast, you can get that local radio station by going into iHeartRadio's app or online and actually look for Waxy, WAXE 107.9, and you can also listen to the station. And by the way, if I sound a little breathier than I usually do, and I usually do, it's because I didn't get my run in this morning, so I did it right before I had to do the show. So if I sound a little it's because of the run, and can't apologize for that because we should all be doing it. So next, I do want to talk about this Wall Street Journal article. And it's an article that really got my ire up, and I'll tell you why. It was called, "In the Digital Era, How Can Older Workers Stay in the Game?" And I'm reading this article, and basically it talks about, things have changed, and there's a new era of technology, and you're getting older, and if you want to keep your job, these are the things you have to do. And so I started reading the article, and I thought it would be sort of helpful hints, that type of thing. And before I get into some of the sort of quotes in the article that really disturbed me, I was thinking that it was making use of all our experience, our maturity, our management skills, all the skills that make up, this wiser and more mature of us, and how people are starting to look at things through the lens of ageism. And it's because people haven't figured out yet, or employers haven't figured out yet, how to make best use of their more senior employees, because, there's a mindset that because younger people have technology skills, that's where your concentration is in bringing these people in. And as people get older, they have less of those skills. And that may be true, but that's not the only thing we concentrate on. So there's a couple of things that I thought were interesting. I'll tell you the lighter things that really got me going. And I'm going, really? Wall Street Journal? Now, I always have a trouble with the Wall Street Journal editorial. But as far as its news is concerned, it's one of the best papers in the business. So let me tell you, I'll just tell you a few things. So let's talk about their recommendation for women. Women should abandon outdated looks, such as a frumpy cardigan over a dress, in favor of a leather jacket or asymmetrical sweater. Those whose hair is thinning can color it with highlights to lend more depth and thickness. And gray hair is fine if it's healthy and styled in a contemporary way. And wear your age as a badge of honor, which I agree with. And that's one recommendation for women. And that's the kind of recommendation that you want to pound your chest in this day and age to give women a recommendation on how they have to look. I mean, besides the fact that we should all dress appropriately and look appropriate, everybody, if you're 20, if you're 60, if you're 80. I mean, besides that, that kind of recommendation coming out of the Wall Street Journal really bothered me, right? So for men, the recommendation is if you're in your 30s and you have stubble, maybe it's hunky. But if you're 70 and you've got gray stubble, it looks like you're homeless, right? And so men, at a certain age, I guess you have to shave. And don't forget that if you want to keep your job. So these are the type of recommendations. And also, one of the recommendations that I can go either way on is if your name comes up at a meeting to be fired, right? You need someone to say, oh, no, that person is great. I've worked with them. So they tell you that you need to collaborate and get people on your side when you're older to protect your job. All right. I don't know where to go with this, honestly. You can tell me what you feel, how you feel about it by writing me at david@yakabouttoday.com, or look for me at Yak About Today on Twitter, or even the Yak About Today Facebook pages, and tell me what you think about this. But if this is the point of view coming from the Wall Street Journal of what we have to do to stay employed, then maybe a homeless shelter is starting to look good. All right, enough of that. So why don't we take a break right now, and I'll see you all on the other side, and I've got a bit of a pornography story to tell you. I want to take a moment to talk to you about New Vision Eye Center. For the last couple of years, they've been a sponsor of this show, and I couldn't be prouder. I've met so many people that have walked up to me and thanked me for recommending them. I hear all sorts of stories about how they've worked miracles. And as you know, I've been a patient of New Vision Eye Center for years. So when I say go see Dr. Minotti, Reinauer, Tate, and O'Brien, it's because I wouldn't trust my eyes to anyone else. Okay, welcome back. Anyway, this is a story that I never thought I'd be actually talking about on the radio, but times have changed and we have a little more leeway to do this type of thing. But this is from an article I read in The Guardian about some new proposed laws in Britain, and I'm going to get to that in a second. And the story I want to tell you that leads up to it is one that happened something like, 50 years ago or whatever it was. But in the old days, the very, very old days, and pornography, when we were just sort of teenagers running around looking for pornography, it was very hard to get. But we would go to the local newsstands, and in most cases they were called candy stores back in Brooklyn, and I would go with my friend Andy Drew Mike Yank, and we'd stand in the store, and we were both comic book collectors at the time, mostly DC Comics, and we would look at the comics, and then behind the comics there would be magazines. Now, mind you, magazines back then that were considered pornography today are just considered health and exercise magazines. So we're not talking about anything, too far gone. So we would go into these candy stores and we would be shaking and we would be sweating, and we'd look around. We'd probably walk back and forth in front of the newsstand, for about a half hour before we got the courage to walk in. And we would look at the racks of the comic books, and we would be opening the comic books like we always do and looking to see which ones we'd buy. And then we'd pick out one or two. And then when nobody was looking, we would pick one of these magazines that was so-called pornographic, and we put it behind the comic books, and our hearts pounded, and they pounded, and they pounded. And we walked up to the cashier, or, the guy who owns the store, and we'd put him down, and he'd go, 10 cents, 15 cents, $1.50. And he'd look down, and then he'd look up, and then he'd take them and put them in a little bag, and we paid them, and we walked out of the store in glee. And just the sheer panic that we went through just to do this in our teens reminded me, I was reminded of it because, so there's a proposed law in Britain, right, where pornography and the newsstands are once again going to be put together, but in a different way. And the idea is that the newsstands are going to sell you pornography passes. So this is the idea of the British Board of Film Classification, and they're responsible for enforcing the recent regulations that force anyone viewing pornography online in the UK to prove their age and identity, right? And the way you do this is that you get an age verification sort of card, and you get it once. It's a once-in-a-lifetime card that says you're old enough to watch pornography. And, that way you just show your card, and, you can walk up to any newsstand and say, I'll take that, that, and that. And nobody looks twice. They just check your card, much the way they sort of card you when you buy cigarettes or liquor in the States. So now you'll be able to just go out and buy pornography in Britain as long as you're, what is it? It's 16 or 18. I don't know. It's 18, right? And the idea here is that it's a privacy issue also. Because what they don't want to happen is what happened in 2015 with the Ashley Madison hack. That's an exact example of what could go wrong, where, for those of you who don't know, Ashley Madison was an adultery website. And people signed up who were married and wanted to do something on the side, which I guess most people down in this area condemn. And, of course, all the information was hacked and leaked, and it led to a lot of blackmail, suicide, and breakups. They're saying the Porn Pass system could help stop something like that from happening, as viewers would only need the code to go online or to buy from their news agents. So nothing would be tracking your name or address online. It would just be a code, and the news agents would only get a code. So that's my pornography story today. And if the radio stations shut me down, well, I guess all you people out there in the podcasting world will get to listen to me. All right. So the last thing I was thinking about today was, have we reached the end of our to-do list? And I'll be back in a second to talk about that. Hey, boys and girls, how about a little self-promotion here? As many of you know, Yak About Today is produced by the David Yakir Group for iHeartMedia. Now, we are a digital-focused producing group that creates content and conversations built to engage our client partners with their audience. We do this by creating the best content on the strongest messaging foundation with a diversity in the media delivery formats. So, if your goal is to get you, your message, and your business out there in the digital media universe and are interested in working with the David Yakir Group, then give us a call at 212-244-6224. That's 212-244-6224, or write to us at info@yakirgroup.com. That's info@yakirgroup.com. Okay, so we're back. Next week, we're going to talk about what the to-do list is when you are a wiser and more mature person. So just to do it simply, we had a to-do list all through our lives. It was school, what we had to do, homework, when we had to play, growing up, getting married, raising a family, going to work. There were always to-do lists. And I know I'm coming to the end of the show, but I'm curious if, for those of you who are retired out there or are only working part-time, do you actually have a to-do list anymore? And if you do, what is it? Do you plan a day? Do you keep a calendar? The calendars you used to keep where, get the kids ready for school, get them ready for soccer, go to the dentist, whatever it was. But today, do you actually keep a to-do list? Do you have that kind of structure? Anyway, tell me what you think. Write to me at david@yakabouttoday.com. That's David at Yak About Today. Yak is spelled Y-A-K. About is the full word about, and today is the full word today. So you'll see 2 T's in there. So David at Yak About Today. And tell me, what is your to-do list these days? And I'll talk about some of them and on the show next week. All right. This is David, and I'll see you next week.